Plastics are the devil. Plastics are the devil. Let's go on to this interesting tweet from Brian Kahn. Greenwashing cranked to 11. Amazon, the disgustingly named company, right? The fact that they're named Amazon is the worst. But pretty much indicative of the world we live in, right? Amazon has purchased the naming rights to the new arena at Seattle Center where the NHL Seattle will play. The name, Climate Pledge Arena. Yeah. Also, Amazon's carbon emissions rose 15% last year. We licensed our stuff to oil and gas companies. We fired employees for speaking out on climate justice. Also, Amazon, look at this arena name, y'all. Climate Pledge. Right. A lot of nice, lovely, beautiful, the best, the most beautiful words, the best words, the loveliest words, stupendous words by Amazon. Right? Yeah, we're committed to doing something to help the environment. We're committed to tackling climate change on a very substantial level, and we all need to work together in order to do this. We need to pull together all of our, corporate entities, and people everywhere will know that we're committed. We're a company that's committed to fighting climate change. Meanwhile, let's crank up the climate change machine. Let's go. Y'all need some thneeds? You want some thneeds? We got thneeds. Everyone needs a thneed. Clay bomb, indeed. Yes, it was. So I retweeted this and said, the best thing you could do to help climate change is shut down all professional sports, all professional sporting events. They foster a lot of emissions, and all those emissions are completely useless, right? I mean, yes, we all love sports, but nobody, other than the people who are employed by these sporting teams or entities, right? There's a lot of people that are, people fly the planes, or, there are stewardesses that are on the planes that they all fly in, and, people that work at the stadiums. I'm sure, they create a lot of jobs, blah, blah, blah. That's about the only thing that they bring. They help the economy on some level. They bring people jobs. But other than that, everything about the sports industry is completely and utterly useless, right? It's just something that facilitates, employment and facilitates consumption of a lot of stuff. Consume. That's really all it's about. But anyways, yes. If Amazon was serious about climate change, they wouldn't associate at all with any, sporting events, and they would encourage these teams to just shut down their operations. And Amazon should shut down their operations as well. Completely shut it down. Like today. Today would be a good day for Amazon to just go out of business. Again, take all that money that you've got hidden offshore and commit all those billions and billions of dollars to help people transition to a new world in which we actually live in balance with nature. That's what they should do for climate change. My recommendation to any corporation, any CEO, any billionaire, any oligarch out there, your biggest and best contribution to climate change would be to shut down your business today. Disband the entire thing. Shut it all down. Take some money and commit it to all your workers. Like, pay them a salary until they can figure out something else. Pay them a salary until they can become self-sustainable. What else could they do? You can keep like, a little bit of money to live on, like $1 billion or whatever, or maybe a couple million. Oh, geez. You think you can live on that? And, commit the other oodles and oodles of billions of dollars that you have to helping to fight climate change. Yes, Sandy, disposable diapers are awful. If you have children, use cloth diapers. Yeah. Disposable diapers are probably some of the most polluting things on the planet. That's true, Irk One. That's true. That's true. Anyways, yes, Kuro hikes allow people to homestead. Absolutely. That should be like part of the Green New Deal would be that everybody gets a house or everybody gets a little plot of land, enough land to, grow produce or grow a garden. Or maybe what they could do is help people start communities in which everybody, basically agriculture co-ops. So everybody has, so a little bit of land, everybody grows a little bit of something, and everybody shares what they grow. And everybody figures out how to make a sustainable community. You can do this over and over and over again. Everything that happens is on an extremely local level. This is something that should be actually a bedrock of the Green New Deal. So in the meantime, while everybody's transitioning to this and everybody's trying to figure out how to do this, everybody should get a UBI. Everybody, you can take the military budget, just take the whole thing. Apply that to, giving people enough money to live on while they're trying to transition to, living a very low carbon lifestyle footprint. Chris Lai, replace highways with high-speed rail and trees. Sure. Gene, free plant-based eating and cooking classes. Indeed. Book Hermit, sustainable communities aren't? Okay, whatever. You can take your pessimism and shove it, Book Hermit. That's what I have to say to you. I like that you're so anti, dude. I like that you're so just like anti everything, whatever. But it's just really not helpful because people are talking about ideas and you're just like, no, I don't think so. It's not going to happen. You sound like a really bitter, very sad person. I'm very sad for your bitterness. Or maybe you're just trolling. I don't know. Maybe you're just trying to be funny. I'm not really sure. But, it's not helpful. I can tell you that much. I don't care for it. Yeah, Sandy, there you go. Yeah, Book Hermit hates everything, and I don't know, Book Hermit also seems to know everything too. And, those are the worst kind of people. People that hate everything and that know everything. Let's move on. So apparently there was a citizen. This is, I don't know how great this is going to sound. Probably not very great. There was a citizen convention on climate in France. A 28-hour work week and vegetarian menus, France's citizen charter for the climate. So I guess a bunch of people, they got a bunch of people together. They actually had a citizen committee who, got together and they figured out what they thought they should propose to the government for, future policy on what we can do to help the environment. I'm going to read through some of this. It's not really earth-shattering, guys. And I don't even know if it's really going to do anything or help. But anyways, we'll go through this. Measures such as cutting the working week, limiting the use of air conditioning. I mean, they're saying 28 hours. That's really how many, that's like by a third cutting the work week. I don't know if that's really going to help. Limiting the use of air conditioning, banning domestic flights, and cutting meat consumption have been put forward in a citizens' charter to cut carbon emissions in France. After 9 months, it took them 9 months to work this out, of work, France's 150-strong Citizens' Convention on the Climate have presented their charter for France. After the final stage of voting, the charter will then be presented to the government. There is no formal obligation to adopt. There's no obligation to adopt any of the measures proposed, right? So they did all this work, and they're going to propose it to the president, and he's going to go, yeah, that's nice. President Emmanuel Macron has backed the Citizens' Convention, saying, I am committed to taking strong decisions. Or he would be saying, I am committed to taking strong decisions, because he is French. The brief, as defined by the president, was to set out a series of measures to combat climate change that will make it possible to achieve a reduction of at least 40% in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 compared to 1990, within a spirit of social justice. Man, the words are so good. Here are some of the proposals for France. Working hours. France is already famous for its generous 35-hour week, although in reality not many people actually work 35 hours. The charter proposes cutting this to a 28-hour work week while bringing in a 20% hourly minimum wage increase to ensure that salaries remain the same. That sounds very nice. The charter states that in order to cut emissions, it is necessary to consume less, produce less, and therefore work less. Companies would also have to carry out an annual audit of their carbon emissions, while governments would be obliged to take emissions into account when awarding contracts. Housing, mandatory energy renovations. All right, that sounds very Green New Deal-y. By 2040, oh my God, how radical. All new buildings or buildings undergoing a renovation before 2030 would be obliged to replace oil-fired heating systems with eco-friendly options, and a system of grants and loans would encourage other building owners to make the switch. Heating and air conditioning to limit energy consumption from homes and businesses. People would be encouraged to ditch heating or air conditioning when the temperature is between 19 C and 30 C. I'm actually all for that. I think that's, like, there should be a rule, like if it's below a certain temperature or above a certain temperature, no AC. Sorry, if you're uncomfortable, too bad. You're not going to die. You're just going to be uncomfortable. This would not apply to medical facilities, nursing homes, and child care facilities. That's a lot of loopholes in there, but whatever. The aim would be to reduce consumption of meat and dairy products by 20% by 2030. The charter stops short of spot checks at dinner time. Excuse me. But suggests that all forms of collective catering, such as school meals and workplace canteens, be obliged to adopt this target. Okay, I guess that's good. Advertising ban in order to discourage overconsumption. This is a very interesting one. The charter proposes introducing a labeling system similar to food labeling, which would show the carbon footprint of a product. Well, that's not that interesting. Advertising of the products with biggest carbon footprints could be banned altogether or forced to include a health warning. Do you think that Macron is really going to adopt anything like that? No. No. No, I say to ye, and nay. Similar to the system in place for advertising of junk food. Transport, to discourage private car use. The charter proposes a package of support for train travel and cycling, coupled with reduction of tax breaks on diesel and a ban on domestic flights where the destination is available by any other means. Okay. That's interesting. How quickly would they be talking about doing this? Making ecocide a crime. Another interesting one. The charter proposes creating a new crime of ecocide. That's novel. I like it. Defined as any action having caused serious ecological damage by participating in the manifest and significant overstepping of planetary limits. Committed. Well, you see the problem with this one. Committed with knowledge of the consequences that would result in which could not be ignored. Okay, so they'll never pass that one. Why? Why, my good people? Would you guess that they would never pass that? because almost everything we do is an act of ecocide. Our entire industrial economy is an act of ecocide. So many would be complicit in ecocide, right? Is driving a car ecocide? Is flying in a plane ecocide? Is operating an airline ecocide? Is operating a car factory ecocide? Chemical factory? If you make Pampers ecocide, almost everything we do is ecocide. So what's the likelihood of that? I'm going to move on to this other article. Very, well, not very, but somewhat similar. Hold on one second. A factor of, maybe this isn't what I was looking for. This is what I was looking for. Sorry. Can working less save the planet? It's from June 22nd. Well, of course it can be a big start, right? Because everybody's been staying home for 3 months. Again, I'll just reiterate. We've dropped emissions quite a bit by double digits. Almost 20%. By what? Staying home. Goes a long way. Since the pandemic hit, how we work has changed. Some of us have had a double load doing day jobs alongside full-time childcare. Others have found hours we once filled with urgent deadlines suddenly empty. And then there are those of us for whom going to work every day, stacking shelves, emptying bins, caring for the sick, became not just a job but an act of heroism applauded by society from balconies and doorsteps. Philip Frey, of the German Center for Emancipatory Technology Studies, there's the title for you, says there are lessons to be learned from all of this for the good of both people and planet. Last year, he authored a headline-grabbing study suggesting that to prevent climate collapse, Europeans should go down to a 9-hour working week. Heck yeah. There exists a strong positive correlation between carbon emissions and working hours. So what he's really trying to tell you is pretty much your job and everybody else's job is killing the planet, right? So all this job, the whole importance of jobs, yeah. Almost everybody's job involves killing the planet in some level, even if it's just traveling back and forth to the job. Also, the money you make from jobs is used to buy a whole bunch of useless crap that ends up killing the planet, right? So there's that too. There exists a strong positive correlation between carbon emissions and working hours. Most of us produce less carbon emissions on the weekends than on a normal workday. This isn't only true of workers in a carbon-heavy sector like manufacturing and energy production. Emissions from commuting and running offices are also a factor in how we work, impacts how we consume. Research suggests longer working hours are linked to increased consumption. Yes, I just said that. And that this effect isn't just to do with income. Workers with less free time are more likely to use private vehicles instead of public transport. Buy energy-intensive, time-saving products. Choose convenience foods over sourcing local produce. In the words of one study, favor conspicuous expenditure in non-sustainable lifestyles. Shifting blame to consumers. Everyone knows you have to consume less, Frey said, but we know that the throughput of energy and resources inherent in Western lifestyles is unsustainable. But focusing on consumption puts the onus on individual choice instead of asking why we are producing so much stuff that is harmful to the planet in the first place. We don't have a debate on how we actually spend our work time because that would imply, rather than giving ethical, moral lectures to individuals on how to behave correctly, actually talking about how we organize our economy and what are socially useful products. Frey said, if nothing else, coronavirus lockdown time has given us pause to consider what kinds of jobs actually fulfill society's essential needs. These are often in the public sector, low paid, or in fact aren't paid at all. Very good point, right? What we call essential workers are doing things that are essential, providing things that are essential mostly to people just living. And we can actually chalk up all the other things that have been, completely shut down during the pandemic. We can pretty much chalk those up to non-essential, right? Sorry to say. According to the UN, 41% of all the work done worldwide is unpaid. Caring for children and the elderly, domestic work, and collecting water, for example. Amaya Perez Orozco, an economist with a feminist XXK collective in Bilbao, says this figure doesn't include activities like subsistence farming that would bring the share of work happening outside the economy to more like 50%. Right. Right. What if we were all growing our own food? What if we had to rely on the food that we grew to sustain ourselves, to feed ourselves? That's work that most people are not paid for. But that, if you could feed yourself, do you need to go to work? That's the question, right? Anyways, you guys understand where this is going. Basically, what they're trying to tell you is that the economy is actually useless. The consumption consumer economy is pretty much 90% useless, unnecessary, and damaging to the environment. I mean, it's just a basic fact. I'm sorry if that hurts anybody's feelings or makes anybody upset or, oh my God, the pearl clutching and the outrage. I thought I was doing something that was really important, but it really wasn't. Maybe on a very personal level, what you're doing is important. I don't know. A wide range of things that people are doing, but like I'm a musician. I play music. People, deem that important on some level. It's important to me on a personal level, but do I need, would it be really awesome to be flying around the world and playing, in big stadiums and playing concerts? Sure, it would be really great. However, completely unnecessary and also damaging to the planet. So, it's a nice idea, a good dream or whatever, but that dream ultimately is actually damaging to the planet. So do you need to be doing that? It's completely unessential. But playing music for your friends and family or playing music for your community or, playing music in a small space for a small group of people might actually be pretty essential and pretty satisfying, right? Anyways. So, bike to gigs, exactly, Osama, right? Well, and all my gigs are local now, so it's all good. If I even have a gig, all my gigs are local or online. All my gigs are on IG, and that's totally fine. Let's get in. I was gonna just try to cover all kinds of things today. I'm going to not make it to everything that I wanted to cover, but because I wanted to get to this Kevin Anderson article. Or it's not an article, but it's an article about something that Kevin Anderson had to say to the ministers of the UK government. So, this is from The Guardian, and this is from today. Government climate advisors running scared of change, says leading scientist. Ministers must act urgently to avoid significant emissions rebound, says Kevin Anderson. Kevin Anderson, one of the world's leading climate scientists, had a familiar reaction to the latest report from the government's climate advisors, which was published this week. The 196-page document by the Committee on Climate Change delivered a stinging rebuke of the government's record and said ministers must urgently up their game if the UK is to avoid a significant rebound in carbon emissions after the coronavirus crisis and meet its 2050 net zero carbon target, which is absolutely ridiculous, right? 2050, come on. Come on. That is way too slow. I think Extinction Rebellion was talking about 2025 net zero target. And they were like, oh, sounds good. How about 2050? Anderson is a professor of energy and climate change working across the universities of Manchester, Uppsala in Sweden, and Bergen in Norway. He said the constructive, meticulous criticism of the government, which is failing abysmally by any measure, is fine. The problem is the framing of the CCC has set for net zero is already far removed from what is needed to meet our Paris commitments. Anderson's latest research argues the UK's planned reductions in emissions, even if it hits net zero by 2050, would be 2 or 3 times greater than its fair share under the landmark 2015 Paris Agreement, where countries agreed to hold global increases in temperature to well below 2°C and pursue 1.5°C. Academics have done an excellent job in understanding and communicating climate science, but the same cannot be said in relation to reducing emissions, said Anderson. Here, we have collectively denied the necessary scale of mitigation, running scared of calling for fundamental changes to both our energy system and the lifestyles of high energy users. Our paper brings this failure into sharp focus. I mean, unfortunately, at this moment, people are going to really have to understand pretty quickly what they're going to have to do. And if they refuse to understand it, I think they're going to have to be made to understand it on some level. And then everybody, of course, head explosion time. But listen, the people that know are going to have to just really get in the faces of the people that don't know and say, like, look, man, it's too bad. That's just too bad for you. Very sorry. I know it sucks. I know you're uncomfortable. But, we're going to have to take your toys away. Shortly after the study was published, Anderson posted a warning on Twitter about what he described as a cozy consensus between senior academics, journalists, and government scientists who were unwilling to publicly acknowledge the urgent system-level transformation required to tackle the climate crisis. Oh, yeah, there's so many unwilling. Again, the conspiracy is not that climate change is a hoax. The conspiracy is that they're not telling you how bad of a problem climate change is and how much needs to be done in order to actually do something about climate change. You have to change your entire life. You have to change your entire life. We all have to change our entire lives, every single one of us. What you think of as normal right now is absolutely ecocide on many levels. And if that were a crime, probably everybody would go to jail. He said many senior academics, senior policymakers, basically the great and the good of the climate world, have decided that it is unhelpful to rock the status quo boat. Don't rock the status quo boat. Don't tip the boat, baby. Therefore, choose to work within that political paradigm. They'll push it as hard as they think it can go, but they repeatedly step back from questioning the paradigm itself. Anderson travels between his 3 universities by long, slow train, and last took an airline flight in 2004, says that such mitigation denial stems from the fundamental failure of academic community to be honest about the implications of its research. Right. If we're here, if we're here on the climate change graph as far as like in big trouble, and we need to get down to here, that, continuing, slowly to kind of do little tiny things around the edges is not going to get us where we're going to go fast enough. Our job as academics is to be disinterested in whether policymakers like or dislike our concerns or conclusions. We should only be concerned with whether they agree or disagree with our findings and why. Well, you know why they disagree. Not possible. On mitigation, the academic community and the CCC have collectively failed the political realm and civil society by tailoring our conclusions to fit with what we judge to be politically palatable, all at the expense of scientific integrity. Chris Stark, chief executive of the CCC, defended the logic behind his 2050 target, which he said was based on detailed considerations of the climate science, based on the IPCC's work, the international context, including the Paris Agreement and equity considerations, and the feasible speed and cost at which UK emissions can be reduced. Oh, but I thought that, we're winning the war in the UK. I thought, green energy, renewables are, making inroads and emissions are way down. Yeah, we're on the path to success, guys. Stark added, our recommendations reflect a consideration of all these issues and are designed to best support the required increase in global effort. It continues to be the CCC's view that this is the right target for the UK. But we welcome new evidence and we will review new studies as we develop our advice on the sixth carbon budget for the end of this year. However, Anderson said too many models for tackling climate change relied on unproven technologies far in the future, such as carbon capture and storage. Perhaps we'll be lucky and they will work at huge planetary scale, but it's one hell of a gamble. He said the models also ignored the fact that it was the lifestyle of a relatively wealthy few that gave rise to the lion's share of emissions. Globally, the wealthiest 10% are responsible for half of all emissions. The wealthiest 20% for 70% emissions. So do you think maybe it's time for the rich to stop being rich? If regulations force the top 10% to cut their emissions to the level of the average EU citizen, and other 90% made no change in their lifestyle, that would still cut total emissions by a third. I have an idea. Why don't you tax the living shit out of the rich? Why don't you tax them at such a rate that they only have, even if they had $1 million, they're still doing major ecological damage. Tax them to the point where they only get $100,000 a year, and nothing else. You don't get nothing else. You have nothing else. We're gonna take it all. I'm sorry about that. If we were serious about this crisis, we could do this in a year. If we were really serious, we could do it in a month, but we are not, and our emissions just keep rising. He's absolutely correct. We could actually do this right now. Immediately, right? It's called the same response we did for the pandemic, we do for climate change. Oh, shit, guys. We're in an extinction event. Maybe we should shut everything down until we figure out the best possible way to go forward instead of continuing to destroy the planet. But he insisted that this did not mean a complete upheaval in how most people live their lives, even the UK. I don't even know how he makes that conclusion. Wealthy high emitters would have to make fundamental changes. The very wealthy among us, senior academics and professors included, will have to make profound changes to our high-emitting lifestyles. He says this after he says that most people wouldn't have to make many changes. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. We recycle and often live in relatively efficient homes, but they're typically big homes, and sometimes we have two or more of them. Many of us are frequent flyers. We drive long distances in big cars, buy a lot of equipment, have fridge freezers the size of a small terrace house. Every facet of our lives, although normalized by us, is central to our nation's high emissions. But the models are unwilling to accept this, preferring to pass the buck onto our children in the form of future technological silver bullets. Anderson said the UK's use of energy should be zero carbon by 2035 rather than net zero by 2050, a move that would require a fundamental re-evaluation of economic assumptions around growth, value, and progress. He said the scale and time frame of a transformation required would be bigger than that of Roosevelt's New Deal or the Marshall Plan to reconstruct Europe after the Second World War. Absolutely. It would have to be pandemic level, people. Many say that such rapid and deep change is unrealistic, but it's much more realistic than believing a fair and progressive society can survive with 3, 4, or even 5 C warming. Okay. Well, he's among the more realistic of climate scientists on the planet And that's why I appreciate Kevin Anderson's work. Excuse me. Uh, it's mostly right on the money. I think that we have to do. I think we have to do more than that. Hey guys, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. You can also support the channel at the links below: PayPal, Square, and Patreon. Also, all of my live streams are available for listening on Patreon if you happen to miss them during the day. So you can sign up for my Patreon for as little as $1. If you want to go check out the live streams, they are all there. Thanks a lot.